something strange is happening, and people have been warning about it for thousands of years. Let's get into it. Start with the insects, because this is where the ancient texts begin, and this is where 2026 begins too. A massive swarm of dragonflies descends on a crowded beach in Rhode Island, so dense that witnesses thought the restaurant nearby was smoking. Then Nevada, millions of Mormon crickets blanketing roads, covering homes, swarming the local hospital. Chicago, Madagascar, a locust swarm, 15 kilometers long, crossing National Route 7, destroying crops, leaving nothing for people to eat. And then Mecca, the holiest city in Islam, during Ramadan, swarmed by locusts, disrupting sacred rituals. During the holiest period of the Islamic calendar, the book of Revelation describes it. Foul smoke from the pit with an attack by something like locusts, swarms so large they darken the sky. And the people watching these swarms in Nevada and Madagascar and Mecca are using the same words darkening the sky. I have never seen anything like this. They just do not stop coming. Maybe it is climate change. Maybe disrupted ecosystems are producing larger insect populations that move in more dramatic formations. That is the scientific explanation, and it is probably partially correct. But the timing, the simultaneous escalation across multiple continents, across multiple species, in locations that carry specific religious significance, that is the part that is harder to explain away. Now the weather. Because the extreme weather events of 2026 are not subtle. Tornado outbreaks across multiple states, hail the size of baseballs, 5-plus-inch diameter hailstones, leaving craters in the ground. Some people measuring what hits their cars and finding objects larger than anything in their living memory. And the connection that some scientists are drawing, not just preachers, actual scientists, is to solar activity. The recent elevated solar flares affecting the geomagnetic field, disrupting the atmospheric patterns that have governed weather systems for centuries, creating conditions that produce events outside the historical range. And then the earthquake. A 4.8 magnitude earthquake hitting New York City, the strongest to hit that fault line in 240 years, felt from Maryland to Massachusetts, 3 days before a solar eclipse. Ancient texts describe signs in the earth and signs in the sky appearing together. A great shaking followed by a darkening of the sun, and in April 2024, that is exactly what happened. Earthquake, then eclipse, 3 days apart in one of the most densely populated regions on Earth. Are these coincidences? Probably. The Earth produces earthquakes on its own schedule, and eclipses are mathematically predictable centuries in advance. The fact that they occurred close together does not require a supernatural explanation. But then the sky turns dark in the middle of the day, and people all over the Northeast are filming it on their phones and saying, oh my God. And you start to understand why ancient people wrote about these moments as signs. Because standing underneath a darkened sky at noon, while the temperature drops and the birds go silent, it does not feel like a coincidence. It feels like something is being communicated. Now the sounds. Because this is the phenomenon that I find hardest to categorize. People all over the world, in different countries, in different languages, in locations with no connection to each other, have been recording strange sounds coming from the sky. Not thunder, not aircraft. Something that sounds like a trumpet, or metal scraping, or a deep resonance that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Scientists propose atmospheric explanations, gas releasing from the Earth, unusual wind patterns interacting with geological formations, electromagnetic phenomena producing audible frequencies, and those explanations may be correct. But the recordings keep appearing from Russia, from Canada, from the United States, from the Middle East, from locations that have no shared geography, no shared weather system, no shared atmospheric conditions, the same sound in different places at different times. And in the book of Revelation, the signal for each of the great events is a trumpet, 7 trumpets, 7 signals. And people are standing in their backyards and their streets filming something that sounds exactly like that. Now the animals. Because the animal behavior anomalies of the last few years have been accumulating into something that is genuinely difficult to explain through normal ecological variation. Hundreds of birds falling from the sky in the United States, not dying in flight from exhaustion, falling, slamming into the ground, dropping dead without explanation. Thousands of dead fish lining beaches in numbers that stun local scientists. Fish raining down from the sky in Saudi Arabia, thousands of large fish falling from clouds far from any body of water. The same thing on a highway in Australia. Scientists with explanations that sometimes hold and sometimes do not. And the oarfish, deep sea creatures that live thousands of meters below the surface, creatures that have almost never been seen alive by human observers washing ashore in Mexico and along the United States coastline with increasing frequency. In the cultures that live along these coastlines, the oarfish surfacing near land has for centuries been treated as a warning, not a superstition, a warning based on accumulated observation over generations that when these creatures come to the surface, something is coming: an earthquake, a tsunami, a disruption of the deep ocean conditions that these animals depend on to survive. Are they sensing something we cannot? The science says possibly yes. Deep sea creatures are sensitive to changes in water pressure, temperature gradients, and seismic activity in ways that shallow water instruments do not always capture. If something is building in the deep geology of the ocean floor, oarfish might know about it before we do. And then the water turned red. A month after the solar eclipse in May 2024, the Minjiang River in China flowed blood red. Algae or contamination was proposed, but other water bodies in the same area were unaffected. In Indonesia, a village filmed water flowing blood red through its streets. At the Dead Sea, the pool of water turned blood red the day before Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. And in Russia, an entire river ran red through a winter landscape with no immediate explanation. The book of Revelation, chapter 16, verse 4. The third angel poured out his bowl on the rivers and springs of water, and they became blood. Algae causes red water. Industrial runoff causes red water. There are explanations. And yet, the timing, the Dead Sea, the day before Yom Kippur, the Chinese River, a month after the eclipse, multiple rivers across multiple continents in the same period, the timing keeps doing something that the explanations do not fully account for. And then the opposite happened. In Saudi Arabia in 2023, in one of the driest deserts on Earth, water burst from the ground, rivers formed where there had been no water. A waterfall emerged from a rock wall. The desert bloomed. The local population stood watching something they had never seen and may never see again. Isaiah chapter 35, verse 6. Waters shall burst forth in the wilderness and streams in the deserts. Written approximately 2,700 years ago. And it happened in the Arabian desert in 2023. Now, I want to be clear about something. I am not telling you the world is ending. I am not telling you that these events are supernatural. I am not dismissing the scientific explanations: climate change, ecological disruption, solar activity affecting geomagnetic and atmospheric systems, geological processes producing unusual phenomena at the surface. These are real mechanisms. They produce real effects, and they account for a significant portion of what we are seeing. But here is what I keep coming back to. The ancient texts that describe these phenomena, the insect swarms, the darkening of the sky, the trumpets, the animals behaving strangely, the water turning red, the water appearing in deserts, these were not written by scientists. They were written by people who were observing their world and trying to record what they saw. And they described in specific detail a sequence of events, a pattern, a set of signs that they said would appear together. And in 2026, they are appearing together, not individually, together, at the same time, at a rate and a scale and with a geographic distribution that feels different from any previous period most people alive today can remember. Maybe that is coincidence. Maybe the pattern matching part of the human brain is connecting dots that do not actually connect. Maybe we are in an unusual but ultimately normal period of elevated natural activity and we are projecting meaning onto it because meaning is what humans do. Or maybe the people who wrote these things down thousands of years ago were recording something real, something cyclical, something that has happened before and is happening again. I do not know which of those is true, but I think it is worth paying attention to. See you in the next one.